Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the grecochess YouTube channel. And in this video, after I was finally able to defeat on the third attempt the bot Emir on my third attempt with the black pieces, time now to try the next bot online. Elena from Romania. In this video, I'm going to face Elena with the white pieces and let's see what I can do. But first, let me share the screen with you. And here you see Elena, whose rating is also 1200, is telling me, Salute, can you play better than my students? Well, let's see who are your students and how can we play. But I'm starting with the white pieces this time. If I can win with the white, then next video will be the black. Let's see. Hello, Elena. I start my usual way, pawn goes to e4. Elena, symmetric way, pawn to e5, my knight to f3. It looks like my positional play is no match for your style. My students have never beaten me. Can you? Let's see, Elena. Pawn to d4, the Scotch. And I'm going for the Scotch gambit. Now the real game begins. Bishop to c5. Let me try. If my idea will work. I want my queen to go to d5. I'm taking the pawn on d4. To my pawn in the center. I'm pinning your knight. And let me castle so I pin my knight on c3. I need to exchange queens first. I'm only down by 2 pawns. Wow, not so good. Let me remove your bishop. Didn't start very well. Attack your knight. Attack my rook. You attack my knight. The problem is that the bishop on d6 is protecting the knight on e7. Otherwise, I could take the knight. Elena has placed her pieces quite well. Not easy to take them. I don't like your bishop. Can I exchange it? Like to have, okay, let's double my rooks on the e file. What can I attack? I'm only 2 pawns down, so I cannot for. I didn't do well in the opening. Like to have rooks on the third rank, rook lift as it's called. Let's attack the pawn on b7 if I can. What I'd like to do is have, oh yeah, Elena is blocking everything so well. Let's see if I can start pushing pawns and... they're taking now my rook. My rook goes to c3 to attack your pawn on c7. Even that is not so easy to take it because your bishop is going to protect it. Let's exchange now. Hoping exchange. I was hoping to... Things don't go well at all. I'm already 2 pawns down. Where I would like to place my rooks. The place where I want to place them. You're controlling them. Let's see if I can get rid of some of your pieces. Can I take your... Ooh, can I have background issues if I'm not careful? You place your rook there. I'm going to protect my pawn. I cannot afford to lose another pawn. Do I have a knight? If I take the knight and you take it back, I take your rook. Can that work? Let's see. I won a piece. Great. So now I'm ahead. I have lost 2 pawns, but I have an extra piece. Most likely I'm going to lose another pawn. Not exactly good. I was afraid I would lose it. But Elena has very strong pawns GH8. Let's see if I can start advancing my pawns. You're playing considerably better than my students. I'm not sure if this is a compliment, Elena. They want to block your rook, have a nice pawn on... Yes, here. They want to take the h6 pawn. Good, I got this one. And now really have an advantage. See how big it is. But still, Elena has some very dangerous pawns on... exactly, this one I was afraid. Let's see if I can block the pawns like that now, because what I need to be worried is about the C and the D pawns of Elena. Have an extra piece. Good. I want this pawn is very crucial. What I want to do is I want to check here from c3. If Ella takes a pawn, we exchange rooks, and then I think that my... Yes. And then I think that my g and h pawns can win the game. Because my bishop will control the ABC pawns. Now the b is gone, the a and the c pawns, I mean. I should have taken the a pawn. Let's push the b pawn. Now the b promotes. I have a queen. Tell me something. I think so. Good. The 2 pawns will make sure that Elena's 2 pawns are not... There's no stalemate. Now, how can I mate? Let's go for the second queen. Well, Elena cannot promote. It looks like my undefeated streak is going to come to an end. Oh, Farrell, you got it. Have two queens now. And you grab your queen. Your pawn can move so there is no stalemate. But how can I mate? Now, the pawn on c3 must keep it to avoid any stalemate nonsense. Yes, my queen will go to h8 for mate. Yes, you beat Elena. Wow, you're better than the kids in my club. Can I have another game in the next video with you're going? What I'll have black, but let's review this game. Let's see what does the computer have to say about this game. I had 78.9 accuracy, not very good. 75.4 for Elena. My rating was 1750. Wow, Elena played 1700, well better than her 1200. One great move, each of us. Best 22 versus 19, excellent 20 versus 19, and so on. What you see here is this tells us that Elena reached an advantage of 374 at some point before it started going down, and then I started going up. Let's see. Let's do the review. Let's see how did we go move by move. What does the computer think about the various moves? Of course, I couldn't use it during a game. You see, until now, meaning until move 7 for black, for Elena, we both followed book. Now, at that time, I wasn't feeling well because my knight on c3 is pinned and attacked twice by the knight on e4 and the bishop on b4. So I was going to lose at least a pawn on c3 and perhaps have my rook attacked on a1 because I've won many games like that and, of course, lost in this case. Because if black would play again, they take the knight on c3, pawn takes it back from b2, bishop takes on c3, check, and then they win the rook on a1. If not, the rook at least exchanges, the bishop goes to d2 to minimize damage. But let's see what happened. Queen to e2, computer doesn't like it. You permitted the opponent to eventually win a pawn. You had an opportunity to eventually win a knight. How? If I had castled, yes, because then I would put my rook on e1 and the knight on e4 is pinned. So minus 1.23 already. Inaccuracy. Yes, I missed a chance to tactically win a pawn by sending to d5. Castling for me, great. Now your opponent can't stop you from winning material if you make the right moves. Exactly, yes, I was afraid. If you want to move my queen to safety, what I was afraid is if I took the knight here, look what's happening. If I move my knight, if I move my, if I took the knight, I'm sorry, if I took the knight with the pawn, queen takes my queen, I'm a queen down, forget it. What can I do? If I move my queen to safety as the computer wants, let's say to c2, then the knight is safe. Yes, but then I can threaten the rook to e1, perhaps, if I want to c2. I'm not, yes, the knight on f3 will support, perhaps. And after 10 moves, I'm down by 1.99. Elena is ahead. I take the knight, of course. Yes, bishop takes my pawn, and my rook goes to b1. At this point, you'll see I'm already down by 2. How do I know the one was c3? The other one was the original pawn that I gambitted for the Scots Gambit. So I'm already down by 2 pawns, which means that if everything is exchanged, I will go to an ending with 2 pawns down, which is almost lost. Well, there is an exception if both of them are rook, the same one, and the king covers. Yes, you can have a draw, but that's the best I could hope for in Viv, and that's not very likely. Mistake, they want the bishop will go back to h3. My bishop goes to b3, it should go to d3. At least in b3 it's protected by the pawn on a2 and the rook on b1. In d3 the bishop is not protected. Both kings are castles. Bishop to b2. I want to get rid of, yes, if my bishop went to a3, then the knight on e7 is, that would be nice. Look, if I thought of it here, and the rook has to go to e8 to protect the knight, and then my bishop can go to a4. No, then the pawn will cover, but then I can take the knight, rook takes, and then I win the pawn. That's what the computer wanted me to do. So missed defender removal. Yes, that's what it is. Bishop here, rook goes here, bishop takes knight, rook takes knight, and my bishop takes a pawn. So I'm down by 296. Wonderful. Bishop goes to b4, pawn to a3. You're kicking the bishop out of useful square. Bishop to d6. I'm down by 3.21 after the first 15 moves. Things don't seem to be nice at all. Of course, there is no guarantee of loss or that Elena would win, but still the odds are very, very good for Elena at this point. Rook to e1 to attack the knight. 338 down, the bishop to f5, the best move. Fortunately, I saw that my rook is under attack, not always easy to see, so I send it to c1. Bishop to e4. Decent, but they had a better one. What? To move the pawn to c6, so they don't need to keep their bishop on d6 to protect the c7 pawn. Knight to g5. Yes, I'm threatening to capture a bishop and win material after the trades, that's true. But bishop goes to 5. Bishop to c2. I want to get rid of these two bishops of black of Elena. Are very, very powerful in the center of the board. And if I can get rid of them, why not? My bishops, okay, they have open diagonals, but they are on the corner of the board. First exchange. And I'm down, believe it or not, by 3.44 after the first 20 moves. Material-wise, I'm down by 2 pawns. The 3.44, I didn't know it during the game, but the 2 pawns, I knew it. I was down, wasn't feeling well at all. Knight to f3, knight to c6. And now I double my rooks on the e file. The computer would rather have my rook to b1, so then I could attack indirectly the b7 pawn, extract the b7 pawn. But I want to double my rooks on an open file. Rook to d8, rook to e3. Yes, if I move my knight to h4, but on h4 my knight is unprotected. Bishop to, yes, I wanted my rook to go to the third rank and then go to g3 or h3. The bishop stops me. Rook to b3, yes, attack the pawn on b7. Pawn goes to b6. Look, if I'm attacking a pawn and the pawn has to move to defend itself, yes, it defends itself, but creates weaknesses for the pawns next to that. The pawn at e7 not easy to be attacked because of my pawn at a3. The pawn at c7, I could attack the first knight with the knight leaves to take. Even then, the bishop covers it. The bishop covers the c1 square. So not easy at all, but at least in the future, I might be able to attack the a or the c pawns. Pawn to a4. So since there's nothing else I can do, let's push a pawn on the a file. This is really a minority attack. 1 versus 3. See what you can do. Usually minority attack, you may be 1 pawn less. Knight to a5, not to block it, but to attack my rook on b3. Rook goes to c3 and attacks the pawn on c7. Well, it's defended by the bishop on f4, but if the bishop for some reason had to leave, who knows? Knight goes to c4 and not only blocks my rook go to c7, but also threatens my bishop on b2. And bishop, of course, will go to c1. Although the computer would rather have it go to a3, and then I attack the rook on f8. Bishop to d6. Now, after 27 moves, I'm down by 374. You see, something need to change. You see, there's no way I can continue to advance. If my pawn goes to a5, ideally I'd like the b6 pawn to take it, so I double the pawns and perhaps I may attack them. But now there is a knight on c4 that can take the pawn on a5. So what can I do? Let's see if here we can do something. I'm already down by 4.38. After my 28th move, I'm down by 4.38. That advantage is quite enormous. And my opponent needs to do lots of mistakes so I can enter the game. Okay, number one, I decrease the deficit to 367 after this exchange. No darker bishop for Elena. That was very powerful. No bishop, in fact, at all for Elena. Rook goes to e8. I like that choice, maybe not the best, but my pawn on e5 is attacked twice by rook on e8 and knight to c4, and defended only once by my rook on e1. What can I do? I cannot put my rook on e3 for a second defense because the knight will take it from c4. Instead, pawn to f4. And since there is no dark colored bishop and no queen, I don't have to worry about the diagonal from a7 to g1. Otherwise, it would really be very dangerous. So now I protect my pawn. Rook to e6. My rook goes to d1. Best moves is the computer. And now here is what I was hoping. My rook on c3 is threatening the knight on c4. If before I did it, I would lose my rook from the d5 pawn. But now if the d5 pawn takes my rook, I'm taking the rook on d8. So I can win a piece if Elena doesn't see it. And I got lucky. You're now able to win material because the defender is pinned. Elena didn't see it. But when I took the knight, then Elena saw it and didn't take my rook back. Yes, you have 2 pawns. You lose a piece, but you have 2 pawns. So don't exchange. Good idea, Elena. So she pushes her pawn c5. No, sorry. Instead of taking, she pushed the pawn on c5. And finally, look what's happening. Until now, and after my 31st move, I'm down by 328. And after Elena's blunder, because a blunder, I'm up by 163. Take it back. And now I blunder my rook on c2. You permitted the opponent to capture a pawn and win material after the follow-up trades. Yes, I saw it, but I should have first exchange on f6. Because now I'm going to lose a pawn. Third pawn lost for a piece. Elena places rook on c8. This move left the pawn hanging, the missed chance to capture a pawn and win material after the follow-up trades. Inaccuracy is the compute. Oh, I wanted to take as many pawns as possible because otherwise I would take it, but Ella would take the one. Maybe. Moving the threatened pawn to safety. That's true that Elena may have lost a pawn, but the pawns on c5 and d4 are very, very, very dangerous, especially when protected by a rook on c8. Before you know it, they could promote. Connected pass pawns. Let me take one pawn on g7. Elena will not take it back. So in very few moves, the sequence of very few moves from the 31st to 35, instead of being down by 328 after the 35th move, I'm up by 4.50. Changed so dramatically. This shows that no matter how ahead you are in chess, you always need to be vigilant, is the English word. Always need to be very careful and don't take your win for granted. And now I know I'm ahead. I don't know how much. I know material-wise I have an extra piece. But the c5 and d4 pawns are worth way more than the one pawn. Connected pass pawns. They can threaten to promote, and I would have to sacrifice at least a rook to stop them. I didn't see it. If I took the d4 pawn and Elena took it back, I would win the rook at c7. So the connected pass pawns, because with just one pass pawn, I miss a chance. Rook f7. Now it's too late to do it, but pawn goes to f5 and I attack the rook on e6. Rook goes to c5. Rook to e1 to occupy the open file. Pawn to a5. My rook goes to e6. I want to attack rooks because then my pawn will attack the rook on e7 and I may have a nice chance. Yes, with change. I'm attacking the rook on f7. Elena sends it to a7 instead of taking the free pawn. Now finally I'm taking the pawn on h6. Elena had quite a few chances to win the g7 pawn. Now I win the h6 and I protect the g7. But still c5 and d4 pawn are very dangerous, even though computer says I'm up by 6.13. Yes, if I play perfectly, I win, but how can I be so sure? Computer says you get a chance to eventually win a rook. Well, let's see. I should have moved my rook to f2, not e2, and protect my pawn. Pawn goes to d3. 2 squares away from promoting for L. And I have to be careful. Fortunately, my bishop on h6 covers the square on d2. Rook goes to e4. Definitely don't want to do e3 because then pawn can go very easily to d2 and promotes. King attacks the bishop. And if bishop moves, then the pawn on g7 is going to be captured. I'm covering the square promotion. King takes the pawn on g7. Pawn to h4. King goes to g6. I want to use now, I have the two connected pass pawns plus another pass pawn on e6. I want to use the g and h connected pass pawns to promote. Rook goes back to e3 to attack the pawn on d3. King goes to f6. I finally take this pawn. And now I decided instead of immediately moving my rook to check with my bishop on c3. And if king takes a pawn and thought that the king would be tempted to take the pawn, I exchange rooks and I have a winning position. Yep. Computer doesn't even like it. Would rather have the king not take the pawn, but then my rook goes to d6, check, and either with... No, then we cannot even exchange. Then I win the b6 pawn. Maybe not so bad move. Yes, I exchange the rooks, and now my pawns are going to promotion. No one can stop my g&h pawn. The king is in front, but the king can only stop one. I want the pawn on b5, good. Computer would rather have my pawn go to b6. Continue advancing the pawns, so I missed a chance to win the a5 pawn. And now I have on the one side, the b pawn is on b6. On the other side, the pawns are g5, h5. The king cannot stop both. They are too far away. He has to choose which one to stop. And chooses none of them. The b pawn, b6 can easily promote, b7, b8, queen, yes. And now it is just how to checkmate. I want to find the second queen. My bishop on c3 covers the a1 square, so I don't need to worry about the a3 pawn. Now I have two queens, and Elena has one queen, three queens on the board. I take it, and now clearly, you see here that at this point I didn't even realize it. Elena had only one legal move. Believe it or not, the king could go to nowhere. I mean, if the c4 was not there, it would be stalemate. And that's why I don't now take the pawn. I was afraid of a stalemate. A few more checks. And now it's stalemate. Now you checkmate. And that is how I defeated Elena with the white pieces. I'll play again with Elena with the black pieces in the next video. And let's see, after we bypass the unfortunate experience of the Emir bots that with white I won easily, but with black I needed 3 attempts, let's see how far we can go now. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching. I'm Harry Lausaniziris. This is my grecochess YouTube channel. Thanks to the viewers, the subscribers, the likes, and the encouraging comments. And for now, goodbye.